People are actually mad Trump took action, but where was Gavin Newsom when LA was on fire? Hiding behind politics while Trump was protecting people's lives. I always say America is not divided by race or religion, it's divided by people who act and people who make excuses. And President Trump makes history again. You guys gotta check this video out.
Trump officials are also watching what is happening right now on the ground in Los Angeles. President Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, is actually there on the ground. And as we've been talking about why the National Guard has been deployed, what the White House's basis is for that, we asked him about that. We're going to continue to watch what is happening here on the ground, keep these pictures up. But I also want you to listen to what Tom Homan's rationale was for why they have deployed the National Guard and hundreds of Marines to the scene that you're seeing now. Being here, what we're seeing right now is the first time since 1965 that a president has actually activated a state's National Guard without a request coming from that state's governor. Why was that necessary here?
But let me get this straight. Everybody is attacking President Trump because he's the only president in 50 years to activate the National Guard, to not sit there and ask permission from a blue state governor. If anything, that is leadership, nothing less. Let's keep going, guys.
Well, because Governor Newsom and the Democratic leaders of California weren't acting, were quick enough to act. I mean, I've been here since Wednesday last week to initiate an operation, and things got out of control quickly Friday night and Saturday. And the president took quick action to deploy the National Guard to protect government property that was being destroyed, protecting our agents and officers, and protecting the general public. I think the President Trump did exactly the right thing. He's trying to prevent another Minnesota from 2020, trying to prevent another Portland, Seattle tragedy. So I'm happy he deployed National Guard.
So that's the difference between Trump and a lot of people. The left waits until the cities are burned and trashed, right? And then they want to sit there and blame everybody and start pointing fingers. That is simply the difference between a leader and a placeholder. Like the video, guys. Let me know what you're thinking so far.
Well, speaking of 2020, there was a comment that the president made then about whether or not he could deploy and activate the National Guard. I want you to listen to what he said then.
We have laws. We have to go by the laws. We can't move in the National Guard. I can call insurrection, but there's no reason to ever do that, even in a Portland case. We can't call in the National Guard unless we're requested by a governor.
The law, of course, has not changed since then. So what has?
I'm not an attorney, and all I know is I'm on calls every day with the heads of DOD and DOJ. So we got legal minds in DOJ and DOD, and DOJ are making these decisions. So I certainly think the president's acting within the confines of the law. I mean, I'm on phone calls every day, and these lawyers are making these decisions, so I stand by it.
But I think some people may look at that and say, well, one, you know the law very well. Obviously, you worked in deportations when President Obama was in office. You're now back in this role.
I know.
So, really quick, guys. Tom Homan worked for Barack Obama. He deported a lot of illegals. Where was all the fuss? Where were the cities being burnt at when Obama was in office? I feel like it's one of those things that whenever Trump does something, whether it's right, good, wrong, anything, they sit there and attack this man in the media.
Immigration law very well, but I do not. I'm not an expert on constitutional law or insurrection law or national. That's out of my lane. I simply am thankful that whatever President Trump decided, that was backed up by attorneys in Department of Justice and Department of Defense. I'm just glad he deployed those National Guards here because I think they're saving lives. I think they're protecting property.
Well, some people may look and say, if this has not been something that any president has done and hasn't happened since the 1960s, is this the worst protest that has happened since then, warranting that?
Look, I was on the ground Friday night where hundreds and hundreds of protesters who were protesters all of a sudden became criminals. They breached a federal building that had to be pushed back where officers were at risk. Detainees that we had arrested were at risk. Officers have been injured. Property has been destroyed. So yeah, if the Democratic leadership wasn't taking action, President Trump stepped up and took the action. I've been on the ground. I've seen the worst of the worst on it, so I'm glad President Trump reacted to save lives and property.
Yeah, I was just in LA on Friday as well. But on this front and what the president's plans are in the administration overall, have you been personally involved in conversations about invoking the Insurrection Act?
No, again, I'm here running a Title VIII immigration operation. I'm not involved in discussions, but I do know every day a conversation happens with the leadership of DOJ, DHS, and DOD on a decision going forward. I think decisions on deployment of the National Guard and any other deployment of DOD is a decision being made by the White House along with the Department of Justice, DOD. I know those calls are happening every day.
And yet the left is still panicking as if martial law is actually coming. This is one of those things that just prove they fear law and order. Simply, let me know what you're thinking so far.
But you haven't personally been involved in conversations about invoking the Insurrection Act. Is that what you're saying?
No.
I have not.
Okay. And speaking of the deployment so far, the National Guard, we've seen about 300 members arrive there so far, 2,000 activated. So far, also roughly 700 Marines have been mobilized to respond in Los Angeles. How will the administration decide if using those Marines is necessary here?
Well, I think like they're not their number one goal. They're not going to be enforcing immigration law. We're doing that. We're immigration officers, but there's two different lanes of effort here. Number one, we got ICE officers along with other Department of Justice, HCs, FBI, DEA, U.S. Marshals that are out there doing immigration operations, and we're doing them today. We're going to do them tomorrow. We're going to do them every day we're here. At the same time, you get these protests that are getting out of hand, where protesters become criminals and public safety threats. So we got the National Guard or the military. Their job is protection of property and protection of our agents and their lives and their well-being and all the public's well-being. But when these protests get out of hand, that's when the local authorities step in, and their job is to maintain public safety and public peace. And last night, LAPD did a pretty good job out there, trying to quell some of this violence down. So there's two different things going on here. I'm
So,
involved with Title VIII operation, so I'm doing here.
based on you saying the LAPD was doing their job last night, do you think that Marines would be necessary?
It depends. I mean, last night was pretty out of control. And LAPD was out there in force. But we got to remember, look, we have officers injured. We have a lot of government property, whether it's vehicle tires being slashed or windshield being smashed, government buildings being damaged. And we've had instances where one protester threw a Molotov cocktail at an officer. I mean, this is getting to be a significant public safety issue here. So President Trump's thinking ahead of the game. He's leaning forward. He's going to send whatever resources we need to protect property and life. Now, again, the military's role is protect government property and protect our officers. But, again, local law enforcement.
That right there. Exactly. While the Democrats are arguing about feelings, Trump is moving pieces on the board. That's why he's the president. He's not a panelist on The View, or he's sitting here interviewing Tom Homan about what Trump is actually changing. That's the difference between him and a lot of people. I keep telling you.
Person needs to step up and control public safety. I mean, and President Trump deployed these people because the state of California, the mayor of San Diego, the mayor of Los Angeles, and the governor weren't simply acting fast enough. So again, being on the ground here, being involved in watching what happened
Yeah.
Friday and Saturday night, I'm grateful to do this.
Well, and they're arguing that LAPD and the local law enforcement was handling it just fine and that the National Guard was not required. But I just want to follow up on the Marines, because obviously that is a headline that people see that. And it might alarm some people to see that hundreds of Marines have been activated to potentially be deployed. You're commending the LAPD. Do you believe Marines could be necessary?
Yes, and it all depends on the activity of these protesters. I mean, they make the decisions. I keep hearing media reports that they're rioting because President Trump sent National Guard here. It's just ridiculous. They make the decision to burn a vehicle. They make the decision to throw a weapon at an law enforcement officer. They make the decision on assaulting officers. This is their decision. President Trump doesn't make them burn a vehicle or assaulting an officer. President Trump is leaning forward, give us the resources to be here, to be ready to take on what's next. We don't know what's going to happen tonight. It seems like at night, the crowds get bigger, the violence peaks. So we want to be ahead of the game. We want to be well prepared with the military here to protect government and protect officers' lives.
So you're saying that they may be necessary. I just want to follow up on what you just said, though, a few seconds ago.
We're not going to do that. But I will tell you guys is they're calling this controversial. We call it common sense. Protect the people, enforce the law, and do what's right. and don't ask for permission to do what's right. Let me know what you guys think about this video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe if you're new, and as always, let me know what you react to. Out.